They'll get 8 or 12 of us to the beach, according to what condition you are when we try to load the truck up. Surprising. You can get 8 sober people in the same kind of room, wherein you can get like 14 people who've been drinking. They just like sacks of potatoes, but not quite as full. Can we turn the heat off? Yeah. Okay. We're going? Okay. If the inner world had not the outer world to think about, what would bother it then? While there may be no clear dividing line between east and west, up and down, true and false, there certainly is between man's external world in which he moves and his internal one in which he thinks. It couldn't be clearer. It couldn't be more confused. A man once had a bird apparently bred to live only indoors, and which had a peculiar disposition. It would only eat food brought in from outside the house. A man once inherited a castle which came with a permanent resident, a talking bird, of whose constant noise he eventually grew weary and wished to suppress. But the task proved surprisingly difficult until he discovered a trick. As long as he allowed the bird no access to food raised outside the castle, it was silent. It couldn't be simpler. What could be more ticklish? In a dream, do present and future change places? Are fast and slow swapped? Do real and unreal become their contraries? In a dream, are all things impossible possible for the mind of a sleeping man? In the midday sun we all are born, only to be minutes old and it be midnight. Those of the quest seek things most strange, to turn back time, to turn time ahead. Only the blind criticize, only the deaf ridicule. It takes a special kind of unhealth to be healthy enough to ever be free. 'Tis not merely the walls of a prison that hold you. No, much of it depends on your habit of being there. Few are the whales who attempt escape from the belly of a whale. Captives who become free are those who first learn the art of disguise. From which, an inner or outer view, can the stomach lining of a minnow be told from that of a whale? You may not be the one who swallowed you, but you can be the one to spit you out. Freedom is not over the walls, under the fence, or around the guards. Freedom is through you. Right down the middle, through you. If circumstances do not require the mind's immediate presence, it will always be somewhere else. You're either distracted and not actually here, or else attentive and present. Simple. Far too simple for some. Most. With another year completed, and the coming of spring again, one man so reflected. Though I may not have traveled far from whence I started, I would now be pleased could I but cease to dream of home. As long as the place came with a garden, and you still have a garden, at least keep it in a tender, peaceful condition. For a few, the ultimate demise, while yet alive, sort of. A poem. I fell into my mind and drowned therein. One guy's sigh. I can sometimes be a Buddha when I'm sitting down, but then it's all gone when my feet hit the ground. What is it that kills us? Movements external or someplace else? There was once a fish who was choking, but couldn't tell whether from the water he was in or from the water that was in him. A man seeking liberation couldn't be sure what he was struggling against, things outside himself or his thinking about such things. And to make it worse, he began confusing himself with his twin brother, whom until recently he didn't know he had. The guy sighs again. Sometimes when I'm still, I can hold it. But when I start to look, I lost it. If beating up on yourself induced awakening, most ordinary people would be awake. And a sizable percentage of mystics also. One man kept trying to remind himself, if there is no wisdom in words, neither is there folly. If there is no wisdom in words, neither is there folly. If ignorance don't kill you, knowing will. If ignorance don't kill you, knowing will. That's a heap to remember, he'd think to himself, in the grips of his knowing folly. A mind told a man, don't waste my time. And the man told the mind, don't take my space. After having met a certain mystic for the first time, a man said to him as they talked, with a touch of disappointment, I expected you to be more confrontational, to which the mystic replied, I certainly could be if I treated your intelligence, as just displayed by that comment, in the manner it deserves. The unwitting cry of the ordinary is, we don't want justice, we don't want justice, which is the same for those seeking liberation, only wittingly. An interesting aspect of illness, even disturbances of the mind, is the stark relief into which time seems to be brought. And yet bowels and brains run on different schedules. That is to say, mind should not be running on one. Legend tells of a man who died and found himself face to face with God, who, as it turned out, was the word seems, aka should not be. A man once mused, I'll bet that death can reveal a bunch of fascinating stuff. Then later pondered the same possibility for life. The secret of every successful exploration is in where to look. To believe that a teaching or anything outside yourself will save you is a child's faith that a closed fist holds a prize. A man asked a mystic, say, look, rather than being completely enlightened, can you get in a lesser state where you're kind of enlightened, but not so much that you still can't sneer at other people? And in a curious manner, the mystic momentarily enjoyed the question, in that this was the first man he had ever heard speak it, although many are those who've thought it. When the garden cannot be abandoned, it should be tended with a singular care. There is no place on the orb so unfit to live that it cannot be made better by an alert dweller. To live within us, to live without us, the truth of awareness is all about us. Open up your eyes as flowers open up their petals. Things can be pretty even amidst mud and stone. Even after having lived to an advanced age, one man said what he still found most fascinating in human existence is how one can ride a galloping horse while asleep in the saddle. Around his own neck, one man kept forgetting to heed the posted reminder. Anyone who says that a more conscious man would do either this particular thing or that particular thing is at the moment of so saying less conscious themselves. When, after looking at you, you hear them say that the next 24 hours are critical and will determine your survival, take off immediately to some place 23 hours away. A man who had been in the effort for many a year one day ran across Life and asked, "Can I trade in sex for enlightenment?" And Life said, "Sure." And the man thought on this for a moment and asked, "Can I swap health for awakening?" And Life said, "Okay." The man pondered again, then asked, "Can I exchange enjoying life for liberation?" And Life replied, "Not only have you now gone too far, but you've also gone too far." And the man beamed, knowing that he had finally nearly gone far enough. Although you'd never get it from its telling, the moral to this story is that you shouldn't swap life for anything, even if you could. Leastwise, that's what it is from Life's view, which is damn sure good enough for all of us. In re, questionable activities and their consequences. After a night of drinking, one man thought of his hangover as getting back my test results. I don't understand that one either. The clearer a man's sight of the destination, the less from him is heard detailed descriptions thereof. There is a secret ache experienced by certain tongues whose hands cannot keep abreast. There is a treasure box whose store is limitless. No matter what is asked of it, it can deliver. It is the mind. A thing awesome, miraculous, and both enlightening and misleading, with each being so coincidental as to be indistinguishable save to a few unusually alert. When the knowing speak of the illusionary nature of the world, they do not refer to the external world, whose nature is not illusionary, but to the world in which man constructs his perception of the external one, using methods of preferential friction and opposition of forces which employ illusion. Reflections of a flower lover. When not in that special place, I tend my garden, tend it as a poet would. A man asked a mystic, "Is all that we write autobiographical?" Yes, but of life, not of the author. Inquiry. How do men like their consciousness? One exemplary response. Which is more popular, drinking or attempts to awaken? If your pursuit to learn the magic dance, in your pursuit to learn the magic dance, you should change partners as often as possible. This has nothing to do with the external world, but with the verbal shoes in which you think your steps. One mystic's reminder to those with a hunger: if you must take of sweets, avoid at all cost chocolate and vanilla. Busy is not overcome by busy, nor full by fuller. Reflections of one who had long pursued the ancient records. I have been much touched by what I have heard from the past wise ones, especially since I myself have become less noisy. One man traded his external blindness and deafness for an inner and was much happier for it. The journey in a darkened woods. As he traveled through the forest, he was increasingly led by a single light shining through the trees up ahead. As he sat near a sunset, a certain man mused, "Once within, I harbored a field of battle, but now I found it to be more of a garden. And as the reds began to overtake the yellows in the sky, he was at peace." Lights, we're going to ditch the video. There was once a baby boy who was kidnapped as a child, taken away from himself. Commonly known as growing up, developing your own personality, becoming your own man. All of which are normal, natural, and unavoidable, yet which a few in later years find particularly confining and annoying. But hey, such people are by definition outside the norm and deviations from the crowd. So they are no concern to us, right? There was once a baby boy who was kidnapped as a child, taken, spirited away from himself, for reasons that, with the collective, do no harm, but which a few individuals find intolerable. There was once a man walking in an obscure highway who thought to himself, "Would it not be pleasant for my journey if, intolerable, carried with it its own appropriate fuel supply and irrepressible force of motivation? But alas," sighed his feet, "we must press on with what we have." "Still, no need for discouragement," thought the man. "By what means better to go forward than the feet upon which I stand? In fact, by what other means be there?" And he and his feet smiled as they continued their trek. One man tried to keep his house spotlessly clean, as he thought an enlightened man might do. But it was constantly dusty. No matter how often he cleaned, it was constantly dusty. And he couldn't understand how this happened. And finally his dog pointed out to him that all of the dust came in from outside the house. He later told someone that he only kept the dog because it could talk and point. Though he has sought no patent and has no plans for production, one man has developed an optical device, when looked through, makes the human mind appear the size of the universe, and through the other end, the universe the size of the human mind. I'd tell you what he calls it, but it'd probably scare the shit out of you, except of course those of you who've already discovered it for yourself. Prevailing on one planet was an unusual visible spectrum, wherein the color orange could only be seen, identified, and studied under orange light, or else through a specially developed orange glasses. One father continued to warn his son, "If you keep throwing them rocks like that, you're going to end up hitting some rock square in the face." There was once an explorers club whose inner circle secret motto was, It's hard to know just where to look. Whenever where you look, there's something. It, of course, didn't stay secret for long, what with the club having no members and all. One man awoke to find himself in the coma ward of a large metropolitan hospital. The particular hospital was, of course, life, and the man, of course, every man. I say, my good fellow, is this really the sort of idea with which we want to start our day? Hey, it's cheaper than orange juice, and tartar, too. Well, tartar 22222 to you, my good fellow. Sorehead. See, I was playing two parts again. One man danced so long with the possibility, then reality of, being individually conscious in a way that man en masse is not, that he would sometimes suddenly picture cemeteries as being man's collective attempt to cure death. It has all the earmarks, he'd think, and as certainly illogical as that may sound, it is not far afield from the few ideas men will entertain regarding the nature of their non-physical being and its potential health and demise, the last two noted aspects to a few being one and the same. Coma ward, won't you be my coma ward? Well, I thought you'd never ask. You knew I would. Yeah, you're right, I did. One man thought, if it weren't for my mind, I'd have no brain at all. Or is that, if it weren't for my brain, I'd have no mind at all? According to legend, there was once a mystical order hidden high up in some distant mountains, which were hard to reach, and which had posted as a sign only one single path leading to it, which said, "This is not the way to the mystical order, or anywhere else you're going." End quote. And for those who heeded not the warning and pressed on, there was another sign past that one, closer still to the location, which announced, "Okay, so we lied to you on the first sign, but this time we're serious. Turn back now, for you are on the path to a secret mystical destination, which is not where you originally intended to end up, no matter what you thought," which would always make those who had traveled this far say aloud to themselves, "Well, just how the hell do you know what I thought?" Which in turn would always fill the sign with much chagrin. Fake chagrin, that is, which, that being the only type that will grow at these high altitudes. The speaker said, all human conversation started out as a talking to oneself. And a voice from the audience retorted, "Then how did it go so awry?" To which the speaker shot back, "Who said that?" And the voice spoke again, "Awry, awry." The speaker later told his agent that from now on he wanted to be paid in cash in advance. Once you have killed one dust dragon outside your home, any assaults after that are totally redundant and meaningless. I say, General Upheaval, do you realize the possibility this implies? I most certainly do, Major Confusion. It says that if this attitude were wildly held, we'd be out of work. But thankfully, no problem here. After all, we're only dealing with humans. Whew, General, that was a close call. Oh, not really, Major. Not really close at all. One man once and finally realized that all great battles, all worthy wars are fought in one's own yard, and moreover, are fought but once. All else is your imagination of the memory of it, which in some instances is imagination of memory of a thing that never occurred. Or in the case of those with dust dragon slaying potential, imagination of memory of a thing that has yet to occur. The awesome aspect of the normally unnoted nexus twixt the foot on the leg and the watch on the wrist is in the natural inclination it supports to always look ahead somewhere for the field of battle. After a lifetime of working multiple jobs, sacrificing, scrimping, doing without, and saving all that he made, one man finally bought himself his dreamed of yacht on which he planned to sail away to complete freedom on the boundless seas. And in tribute, he christened the ship by this name. If I'm not there now, when will I ever be? In truth, the kind of sentiment that has in fact sunk many a vessel, imaginary vessel that is. Then there was once this one captain who stood sternly on the bow, looking out at the far horizon, shouting to his crew, "All sails up, as fast as you'll go, my mateys," who was met by a return cry, "But we're sinking, my captain. We're going down, not forward." "Very well then," said he, "if that's the way it's going to be, then make some more holes in the hull so we'll go down faster. Speed, me hearties. Timely progress in some direction is all that matters here." In secret myth and legend do many a prince, once awakened, first thing kills off the timekeeper. The soles of a seeker's feet, planted plainly on the ground, could convey to an alert eye a most useful perspective regarding where a man believes himself going and its connection to the amount of time he thinks it will take to get him there. Check it out. Feet, no matter where they are always home. And as God put his in Adam's back, showing him the garden gate, to himself said, Now men will no longer live by feet alone. Not now. Not that they have a mind to come home to," which was a bit of a curious thing for him to say, now that man no longer had a natural home. But hey, it's all just myth and legend, imagination and illusion, fear and guesswork. The mind, baby. Just the old mind. And a viewer writes, in regard to an item you read on the show earlier this evening, it might actually be nice to wake up and find yourself in an actual coma ward. At least then it seemed like you kind of had some excuse for being in the condition you're in. No? I'm not even going to dignify such thinking by replying, "Nurse, oh nurse, would you please come fluff up my pillow?" One man began to suspect that this is connection to that is exaggerated somehow to men's perception. Somehow. Maybe by the mind, maybe. But somehow, for damn sure, it's been exaggerated. All the connections between this and that. Yet another man began to suspect that the connections between this and that were underemphasized. And in fact, this and that were actually the same thing, or at least so close together as to be operationally indistinguishable. A third man happened to come along about now and wondered if it might be possible, if not even profitable, to get the first two men together somehow. Just to talk the whole affair over and see what might come of it. Third man can at times be like an extra useless wheel on a bicycle, while at others like a rocket hooked to one. It's always according to how sincere the first two men are about solving the question involved. Which reminds me of a guy who once thought if I really wanted to be as smart as I say I do, I'd have 3 sides to my brain, not 2. An arrangement that never settles anything. Except, of course, to keep the mind on its throne. Hail to thee, O great Caesar of Gaul. You have no idea how you gall me. All right, I owe you $1. Anything said about an ordinary man is a distortion. Anything said about an awakened one is a lie. It can't be said too much that you talk too much. But I haven't said anything. Not out loud, perhaps. The typical day in the life of the mind is too much so a typical day in the life of the mind. And as he stood on the beach, the man began attempting to sing. I can't see clearly now, and the waves suggested that maybe this was due to all of the noise. But the man knew it was more due to all of his listening and looking, a thing which such unfettered phenomenon as waves can never comprehend, since there is nothing there uncontrived to be perceived. Then some months later the man stood again on the shore, and this time freely sang to himself, I now can see clearly since I strain not to see, while all of the time being perfectly reflected by the unimpeded sunlight on the surf. Seems forever surprising how much better men feel once reunited with themselves. Rats live in packs, and commonly, though unnoticed, populate public thoroughfares. One man discovered himself to be a rat pack, huddled about his own inner thoroughfare. In the life of a mystic exists but a single exterminator, and a tricky one to contact in that he hides his services, and in fact cannot even describe to potential clients what they are and how he goes about affecting them. One man mused, "'Tis only through the grace of God, the unreliability of poison, and the existence of my own mind that rats are able to persist." Some years later, this man was suddenly struck with the sight of long lines of elephants stretched far off into the horizon, bound together by one holding in his trunk the tail of the one before him. And as the man stood watching this scene, all he could think to himself was, rats, rats, rats. By the way, I don't like to editorialize, but I've had several people write the show recently suggesting that they thought some of these news items were, why'd they put it? That they thought they were allegorical or not literal. I don't know how many times I don't have to remind you of yours. History records the exploits of only the rudest of warmongers, those whose victories are over visible foes, while the truly extraordinary warriors remain unknown to the crowd, men who overcame their opposition by swallowing it. Once on another world, red and yellow met, and later on became, well, I don't want to get personal and go into all of that just now. One man so pondered, if, as I've heard said, our ordinary mind and the enlightened mind are one and the same, then why do they not have anything to do with one another? In the first place, one guy's theory is that man came up with the notion of God in the first place just so he could then come up with the idea of praying to God, which in the first place was an attempt to come up with something to replace him talking to himself, which from the outset men have found annoying. Well, most men, and mostly from a minority view for the wrong reasons. The difference between those who joust with windmills and those who parry with imaginary windmills is the same difference extant between you when you're trying to overcome the mind and you when you think that you're beginning to succeed or fail. Same thing. One man said, I'll believe that someone else can show me the way to liberation if you can find me a corn silo in which rats are indigenous. It takes a special man to be satisfied to run off only with himself. And one man said, I'll believe that someone else can teach me to awaken if you can show me a fire that did not come with its own smoke. It takes a quite special man to be satisfied with the truth of how things are. And one man said, I'll believe that enlightenment is possible when it happens to someone who looks exactly like me. No. It takes a very special man to tell the truth, which is really nothing special. The truth, that is. One man one day was so suddenly struck. The secret is consistency. Not the redundancy already present in our minds, but something else. Something new which I can presently only see to be called consistency. And he turned and said to all of his pets, household plants, and furniture, though that may sound to ordinary ears foolish and confusing, the wise amongst you will understand what I mean. All right, $2. Another potential shortcut tip to the status of mystic. Anyone can be awakened on paper. Should be of particular interest to those of you of literary leaning. Don't pretend to yourself to know more than you do. In the world of action, pretend can be good. That is, the attempting of things you've believed you couldn't do. But in the world of mind, pretending to know more than you do is never of use, and for the few is destructive. The history of a typical mystical order is one of its most important aspects, which is why real ones don't have one. One man hired a private investigator to clear up the matter for him. Only problem is that when he hired the one investigator, he also hired 2,000 others. The mind still has you as long as you believe that it is preferable to have but a single buffalo in your bedroom as opposed to a whole herd. Everyone knows the truth. Everyone speaks the truth. The enlightened are simply those who can hear themselves speak it. When one man who wrote realized that he had developed a recognizable style, he first shut his typewriter. And when that didn't solve the problem, cut off his fingers. And when that still didn't cure the situation, jabbed a pencil into his brain. Yeah, he sighed. Now we're getting somewhere. In his own particular way, this one man, I guess, was religious. Leastwise, he had something that seemed to resemble a prayer. At odd times during the day, you could hear him say, "Thank you for your attention." Ooh. Ooh. Somebody could turn out the light. Ooh. You make me a That won't show on camera, will it?
Your brain starts squeezing out your ear.
Well, that was the next thing, is will it show up on my behavior? From a journey up in the mountains, though I have never seen all of the peaks, I have seen what they all look like. A certain man down in the valley cursed the many puddles about his house. Each and every one he singled out and cursed. Cursed them individually and cursed That won't show on camera, will it?
Your brain starts squeezing out your ear.
Well, that was the next thing, is will it show up on my behavior? From a journey up in the mountains, though I have never seen all of the peaks, I have seen what they all look like. A certain man down in the valley cursed the many puddles about his house. Each and every one he singled out and cursed. Cursed them individually and cursed them continually, until it accomplished nothing. Though he saw all of the puddles, he never saw that they were all the same puddle. While dozing under a tree, a man dreamed the question of whether it is the strength and cunning of a foe that overcomes you, or his number. And upon awakening from his snooze, changed that to his apparent number. Hey, what hope is there in warfare if your info is not exact? There was once a mystical order whose sole teaching was, be of good cheer. But it took most students half a lifetime to realize whether this was meant for the mind or for the stomach. And see, there's a built-in trick, because by the time you've sorted this out, you're then to the point that it no longer matters. It no longer matters. Well, it no longer matters whether, I'm not going to insult your intelligence by finishing that, because you know how it goes from there. Oh, the ham bone connected to the serotonin supply site. Should I? Oh, the ham bone connected. There was once an evil king who kept a poor innocent soul captive, using only the method of starvation. That's right. As strange as it sounds, he kept the poor man forever captive simply by starving him. And no, it didn't kill him, for such captivity has a lifespan equal to that of an unnourished man. Oh, the ham bone connected to the everything. Oh, the ham bone connected to the boom. There was once a race of round creatures whose collective physical existence was dependent on things oblong. But a few began to suspect that their individual run might be drastically different if they could think of only things round. The fewest of the few would go on to eventually see thinking only of things round as but a stepping stone to something in the same general area, yet of another order altogether. Seasonal serenades. March. Mirror, mirror on the wall. June. Mirror, mirror. September. Wall, wall on the wall. And then the singing stopped. Regarding the matter of awakening and the attempts to awake. You can't get off a train while it's still rolling. The reason that the secret annals continue to record more cases of plain, simple men experiencing enlightenment rather than sophisticated, scholarly ones is because they can more easily understand this. To hold on to the motions of the mind is to be dragged through rugged terrain by a wild horse. One man fought continual brush fires around his house until he realized that what he took to be flames were in fact his yard. To thoughts, like troubles and houseflies, one man gave the same acknowledgement. So, another one. Today's grand prize question is this. Was the first man who went to sleep also the first man who wanted to awaken? And hey, don't wait on me for the answer. Look at yourself. Oh, come on. Don't pout and be like that. Okay, I'll give you an easy version. Was the first man who went stupid also the first man who wanted to become smart? Yeah, go ahead. You can peek at the kid's paper next to you then. I never thought it'd come to this. Having to monitor for cheating on an ignorance quotient exam. But that's what I get for hanging out with humans. Perhaps of supreme importance is to remember to be careful. You might also remember that a busy person is not a careful person. Oh yeah, and something else. Being busy is an internal thing. At the conclusion of a mystic's comments to a crowd, someone therein began to applaud and call out his name, to which he responded by noting if there was anything to be applauded, it was not the man, but the words the man spoke, which may have triggered new ideas in the listener, and that being the cause of their desire to express appreciation. If you were ever trapped on a planet with zero visibility and wanted to identify the more conscious thereon, all you would have to do is listen out to see who reacted favorably to splendid ideas rather than to splendidly appearing men. Having heroes of ideas rather than heroes of men always separates the few from the many. The travails of travel too long suspended. If you stand on a hillside separating fact from ignorance, you will forever stand on a hillside separating fact from ignorance. Those who say, I can now more clearly see the truth, may or may not be able to see more clearly than they once did. But so long as they say and think such things, be assured that they have yet to learn how to actually see. And the doctor said, stand right here and look at the chart. And the man was alert enough to recognize his mind's voice, even in disguise when he heard it, and realized that it was still up to its standard professional ethics of tempting him to stare at the damn chart. And if not that, something else. A man asked a mystic, can you tell me how to awaken? That I can, he replied, but first I must have some personal information about you. You must take notice, then report to me the answer to this. In bed at night, as you pass from the ordinary daytime state of consciousness into the normal nighttime one of sleep, do you so pass in an instant? Are you at one moment awake and then, bam, the next you're asleep? Or do you pass from the waking state to the sleeping one gradually? There was once a mythical city which held an annual celebration they called a day to show our lack of honor to smart-ass mystics, which of course caused all mystics and would-beers for miles around to move there immediately. Well, as soon as their consciousness got around to realizing the implications of this attitude, the math of it, an awakened mind neither adds nor subtracts. One man's made it simple. He says he's narrowed it down to this, that anyone who's died is his hero. He says especially regarding thoughts. Speaking of it, the enlightened mind neither comments nor doesn't comment. One man's hoped for new home address he pictures to be, abandonment is health, possession, the deadly cancer. To what in himself does a man refer when he thinks, I should let it go? That's an easy one. Try this. What is it in him that thinks the I should let it go stuff? Now there's your question. The ordinary like to fret over physical habits, lest they concern themselves over the pertinent ones and run the risk of turning into mystics. Yeah. A mystic with 20/20 vision still can't see good. I shot an arrow into the air. You mean you shot it externally? That's correct. I shot an arrow into the air, certainly externally to myself. What's the point? Never mind. Perfect vision does no good if you're looking in the wrong direction. I knew that. Never mind. When he had nothing left to hunt, one man would lay a blanket over his outstretched leg with just his foot exposed, which he would wiggle about as he took shots thereat. Just think where you could also apply that. One guy about decided that a man who won't talk to you may be your best friend. Hey, mind, did you hear that? He added. As regards escape, the liberated mind neither runs nor doesn't run from it. First a note, due to my continuing severe bouts of personal depression, we were unable to obtain the services of the actor who normally portrays me on these tapings. So due to those circumstances, tonight I'll be forced to fill in for myself. The news. It both can be said and can't be done, but can always be said to be done.